I'd like to call the Finance Committee meeting to order on Monday, February 23rd, 2026 at 2 p.m. Roll call, Berto here.
White here.
Housen here.
Warfel here. Laskowitz here.
Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So move.
Motion by Laskowitz,
Second.
second by Housen. All in favor? Aye. Carried. Approve the meeting minutes from February 9th, 2026. Does anybody have comments, corrections, additions? I have some, but I don't know about anybody else. Okay. I question. I don't have page numbers on the top of this packet. So it's on page 2 of the minutes. Under line 16, the committee agreed that future budgets should include better documentation and worksheets for line items tied to specific activities. I don't remember, I don't think that we agreed that. I think that's something that you had requested, Mike, and Ben mentioned something about worksheets, but I don't know that we agreed to
I don't remember the specific
thing in
discussion.
particular.
Denise. I don't,
I remember the worksheet discussion.
Yeah,
I
Ben
can't remember.
mentioned that.
I can't remember the specifics of that. I apologize. I see it, but
I just don't think we agreed on anything.
I
So,
will go back and make sure that that's attributed to Mike or,
okay,
because that
I'm
was,
just reading the lines ahead of it to see if it gives me any recall.
It was about the budget amendment piece.
Oh, I remember the discussion and I'm not sure it was worksheets that was the issue, but we had a question about utility bills. It was specifically a concern where the utility bills were coming in not within the period of incurring the expense, and they actually hit a new fiscal year.
right, and it says that on the second
So-
sentence, staff to review accounting practices for delayed utility.
And I think that's all I really needed, because the question was specifically related as to whether or not we're required to record the expense in the period, whether or not we receive the bill or not. Or is it when you incur the
should I
expense?
strike that line then?
Just strike
Yeah.
maybe the first
I'm o-
sentence if we're all in concurrence.
16,
Yes.
yeah, I'm fine with that.
And then on the next page, Devley TIF incentive request. I think that we should note in there, that Devley was told he was not in the TIF. And that he found documentation and, the actual TIF map and gave it to the administrator. That's why we were handed out, new updated information confirming the property is within TID 2. I think it just doesn't,
Sure,
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not clear about the updated information.
right,
What was it? How did we get it?
right,
Why?
why?
okay. Would you mind if can I redo that and send to all of you for approval?
Sure,
That little blurb?
right, BCC, everybody?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So on that TID too, we had a conversation last year, I think Andy led it, where Andy and I both had a hard time finding documentation on TID 2 and what the borders were. I don't know if you remember that,
It's
Andy.
in the last page of the comprehensive plan.
Okay, because it wasn't in the state record, which is what we had looked at. We're sure that TID 2 is correct as the current map defines it. I'm just asking that question. it may be updated with the state now, but at the time it was not. Okay, this is the same drawing that's in the current debt, correct?
It's in the comprehensive plan. I think you were talking about the state website.
Yeah, that because at the time there was a question, I think Andy brought up a question last year during a finance meeting. We didn't have it quite right. I'm just wondering if that's why there was some confusion as to the boundaries of TIF two. But we're confident these are the correct boundaries as approved by the board.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Is there anything else? And is there a motion to approve as amended?
I'll approve it as a minute. I'll approve, the minutes from that meeting, meeting of February 9th, 2026 as amended.
Motion by Housen,
Second.
second by Laskowitz, all in favor? Aye. Motion carried. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. We have the Devleys with us. Is there anybody else online? Julie,
No,
do you wanna? Okay. All right, we will move on then to 6A. 2026 budget review allocation for sale.
All right, so as part of this is a follow-up from the previous meeting. Staff did conduct some research into different municipalities on their donations to sale. We did provide a summary, but it can be a high-level summary that essentially the Village of Sister Bay and Liberty Grove are the only municipalities within the county that do contribute to sale, and that both for 2026 were $10,000 within value. There is some different communities that do have no donation policies, such as Gibraltar and I believe Ephraim. Is that correct?
Ephraim had partial donation.
Okay, Ephraim has partial donation policy. But in any case, the service area for sale is listed for their website as Bailey's Harbor, Ephraim, Liberty Grove, and Sister Bay.
Thank you. Anybody have any comments on that or just move forward?
I guess just I appreciated your concern about this, Denise. I'm just trying to understand. So this organization, do they raise all of their money from private donations and then contributions municipalities might give them? I mean, how are they funded?
I think there, if I recollect, correct me if I'm wrong, that some of the people who partake in their services I can't remember if it was $100 or something like that. But if they can't afford it, according to sale, whatever their criteria would be, then these other funds can get them into the program. That's how I remember hearing it.
So I recently spoke with them, and it's, at least from what they said recently, it was $150. It provides them for 9 different visits over a period of time. And that essentially any of the other donations could potentially be covered intermingly, but essentially having them pay it forward is what their membership fee would be for having the services.
So just a follow-up question, if Sister Bay made a contribution of $10,000, does that mean that our Sister Bay residents, which could include all residents of Sister Bay, be eligible for 9 visits times each $150 of the 10,000 we donated? Or how does that work?
No.
No, it's just a
General,
a donation similar for, any other nonprofit. It's,
okay,
yeah, I wouldn't be able to speak to the specifics of why it's there, but I mean, ultimately it'd be considered as a sustaining donation, not for service.
I mean, I like the service a lot, it seems like a great program. I don't have any gas with the fact that we made a contribution. But since Denise raised this, I've kind of thought about it a lot, and if we are contributing it, we should probably make sure it gives some sort of priority to our village residents in the future if we do this again. I don't know if they would go along with that or not, but
So they expressed that they were very appreciative of the donation within the past and within this current year. When speaking to them, essentially in the past, I believe they've come forward and came to a finance committee meeting to essentially present their case of why they would be worthy of a donation for that year. They asked what the appropriate process would be for next year. I said, I'm not quite sure, but the typical process would be either the status quo or to provide a letter requesting or having some type of request of what you'd be utilizing the funds for, what the contributions would be. So
And I think Louise, they started at Parks? Did they not make?
I don't know if they started at Parks, and the first year we said no. And then, was it the first year or second year? I don't know if we said no 2 years in a row or 1 year, and then they came back, yeah.
So they had come to Parks, I think, and Finance.
okay,
Yeah, but I do know someone that's getting their services, not that that makes a difference, but I know that they're giving services
okay.
that way. How many? I have no idea. How many members? I don't know.
I think that's included as part of their annual report as well, that they might, if they come back next year for a request, they could probably touch on that as well, about what their services expand to and what specifically they could provide to the Sister Bay residents as well.
Thank you.
So did this come to a previous finance committee meeting? Like, they never presented to.
No, they
this
never
group.
came to finance.
Okay, I was like, am I crazy? I don't remember talking about sale.
No,
Like, I remember hearing the name briefly and then it came up in the budget.
They might have the first year.
Okay, I was like, I feel like I'm totally lost and like I missed the whole conversation. Okay, that makes better sense. I've been on their website. I like it. But
Okay.
we've donated in the past this amount.
Pardon?
We've donated.
No,
this
that
amount.
was the first
that was the
time.
first time.
Oh, this was?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah, we said no the first.
okay. Okay.
Okay, we'll move on to 6B, Highway 57 Trail Utilities Infrastructure Discussion.
All right, so this discussion came about as a result of the utility committee discussion on the project. Essentially framing this is that there is a Highway 57 multi-use trail project that is planned, initially was planned to be started within the spring of 2026, although based on new developments within the project, it's very likely that this will ultimately be somewhat delayed. To the extent that it's delayed is not yet determined. But essentially, as part of this utility extension project, as part of the trail extension project, there is an opportunity for the utilities to be extended within the areas without disrupting the trail or relocating the right of ways. So the utility extension has been considered for some period of time. The most recent design maps were from 2018 on the subject. And that essentially as part of this, new commercial or business users within the area could potentially have utility access as a result of this proposed project. So again, just to reiterate, is that prior to putting in the trail, there would be an opportunity to put in the utility extension to avoid damage to the trail or to have relocation of utility expenses. The other alternative would be, putting in the utilities at a later time, which would potentially result in those actions being taken, or not to have the utility extension at all. So there is some different action in history that is attributed to it. The financial information that is available, I just wanted it to be very aware and discussed as part of the meeting, is that part of this utility extension was already intended to be budgeted for. It was not the full area that was intended for the utility extension, but there was some overlap that was attributed to the cost estimate. And that if this was something that the finance committee wanted to explore, there is some different financing options that could potentially be available for the project, including special assessment for property owners, potentially using tax incremental financing, long-term debt on the revenue or utility side, long-term debt for general obligation, or potentially having a combination of those, including reserves funds. So prior to this meeting, village staff did reach out to Baird, which is the financial advising service for the village, and did identify some of those different strategies as as part of the financing strategy if we did move forward on this project. Some of those strategies included the special assessment for adjacent property owners, the reallocation of the broadband loan, proceeds from, water, sewer, that would cover, the proceeds for water, sewer, and lift station costs. And then it could potentially be a new, revenue bond that would be supported by other sources such as the utility, should be the revenue side, the TID, or the general obligation. And then we also did consult with REL, the engineers for the project, and that they did indicate that it would be likely that the lift station could be covered as part of any special assessment costs, and that any assessments could be deferred for properties that don't actually have anything that has been developed on the property, and that the typical standard practice for the village when having deferred costs would be to pay it back over a 10-year period. So with that information, some different alternatives would be seeking any additional information if there is any specific discussion about a financing alternative that we can bring back to discuss what the specifics would be. Otherwise, it could also be moving forward without those specifics for any recommendations to the village board, recommendation for rejection, or to seek any other additional information or postpone. So the attachments that were included were for the water and sewer extension map, and then for the cost estimate. One of the notable things that is included in the cost estimate is that there is no attributed cost for the lift station portion of this. It's highly dependent on the design work for the project. So it could be anywhere from $1 million to $2.5 million is generally what was discussed for it. So it depends on the nature of the lift station and what the specific uses are. So that can be discussed, but we can certainly make some assumptions when talking about financing for future meetings as well.
Is Megan joining us?
So Megan was not joining us for this one.
Okay.
Then, so in the deck, we have REL's estimate of the project, which is just shy of $1 million, 921. Does that not include the lift station?
So it does not include the lift station line. Item 21 would be where the lift station would go. And that there were too many variables, and that REL thought it would be a little bit distracting to, put in one number, say it is the definitive value, and then revise it later on.
So a couple of additional questions. This 921 was not in any of our discussions last year as we worked on the budget for 26. So we're basing an unbudgeted expense that we would like, we're being asked to consider adding to our projects list to be completed in 26. Is that correct?
So as part of this, if it were to be completed within 2026, there would need to be some sources of financing for it. Which if it was for general obligation or utilized sewer or revenue, yes, is that it would have been considered an unbudgeted. If there is an opportunity to move the trail project to 27, this could potentially be planned as part of the 27 operating budget and 2027 CIP to cover any of the expenses. But it would be with the understanding that the project would be delayed, and we would have a confirmation of what different financing alternatives would be used for the project.
I mean, where I'm struggling is that we're 2 months into a fiscal year. And maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but we're 2 months into a fiscal year where we put a lot of energy into building a budget for 26. And this is a big percentage variance in the total budget. Now, we're not talking yet about how to fund it or how it impacts the levy, but it does bother me that we're getting an expense, or excuse me, capital item, I guess it would be, recommended to us for almost $1 million that we didn't put in the plan.
It does say though here that it's partially budgeted.
So as part of it, this project was broken out into different phases. You can consider this to be kind of a first portion of the A project. So essentially, as part of it, it would extend utilities slightly southward, and then it would cross over to the road nearby the aquatic center over there. So that would be what the utility extension would be intended for as part of the budgeted item. Anything that would be beyond that southward would essentially be included as part of the unfinanced portion.
So basically, the crossover from on 42 was in the budget for 26.
Yeah, so as part of the extension 457 over there, for the parcel on the adjacent side, that's what was included as part of.
And that was $400,000?
So it covers under two different, sources. So one would be for the collection side of things, and I believe one would be for the water. And so that would be for the 400,000 and then for the 250,000.
And that
Overall-
was in our capital plan. That was one of these were two of the items that we had listed in the capital plan, those two
In
items.
utilities, yes.
And what about the capital plan that finance approved and recommended to the board? It was in there?
So the extension was not in there. So at least from what I viewed of it, I did not find anything that referenced it. When talking about it, it was planned as part of that smaller extension. But the full extension that would be associated with the 57 trail project was not, but.
Right, but the dollar amounts were.
Yes, yep,
650,000 was budgeted, even though it didn't clearly or specifically.
Identify this, it was more generally stated, but it's, so 650 of this capital is already in the 26 budget, so the request is for the variance between the 650 and the 927.
yeah, so it'd be for consideration, so I would say as part of this meeting, it would be whether or not this would be, something that should be considered, right? Is it a project that would be appropriate to move forward on? And then secondly, would be discussing what the remaining financing would be and what the different alternatives could be utilized for. And identifying which, if you did move forward, which options would potentially be more appropriate. And then having an evaluation of what that would be for final recommendation.
Okay, but it's two separate questions, right? So the
Yep.
first question is, does this committee approve or recommend to be approved by the board an additional, it's a difference between 927 and 650?
And plus the unknown lift station cost as well.
Well, that's not a 26 cost.
It would not probably be a 26 cost, but I know that it would need to be within a 2-year period that would go online, but I would say.
Why wouldn't we just treat that as a planning item in our financial planning preparation later this year for 27? Why would we have to look at that now?
I'm not saying that we have to right now, I'm just saying just in terms of the consideration as a whole. So if this project were to be completed within 26, what you're looking at is probably just that number right there, right? In terms of the project costs or that's listed on the cost estimate. And there is some overlap within the budgeted item, but there is some potential that this project could be, or the village could make it be pushed back into 2027 as well. The trail project does not need to start until June 4th, 2028, and that there's already going to be quite a bit of acquisition work for the project, the new redesign work. It could be pushed back as well in terms of this financing, and it could be included as part of the operating budget for 27 and CIP for 27.
I'll open this to others, but my comment is, if we have 650 of capital in the 26 budget, we committed to spend that in 26, and we should do it in 26. Anything over and above that, I'm not supportive of spending until we go through the process, which includes a public hearing to review the incremental expense, and I think the project should have to kind of stand on its own merits. I also think if it's possible, it does make sense to put the infrastructure in before the trail, and it seems like with this most recent delay of the trail that you're explaining, that may be a possibility. That's my input. I'll back off.
Excuse me, Megan has joined if you wish to have her speak at all.
Hi Megan. Thanks for joining in. I didn't know, if you wanted to say anything to the finance committee in particular.
Yeah, we can't hear you. We still can't hear you, Megan. You're unmuted on my end.
How about this?
Yes, that works.
Okay, so let me remember what I just said. I don't have anything specific to add. I just kind of jumped on in case anybody had any questions about the engineering aspect of this. Originally I was trying to plan it in 2 separate phases because I thought time was on our side, but then it seemed like the timeline maybe got moved up for the trail, but now it seems like maybe the timeline got moved back. So no comments from me. I'm gonna continue working on the planning and the engineering with the engineers, but besides that,
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Liz, she's here if somebody has a question.
So I do, one quick question, Ben, I'm on the last page of the packet. And the title is Opinion of Probable Cost. This is something from, Robert E. Lee.
Yep.
So the total there is 606, sorry. It's, it's 668 roughly. And then they're adding 20% contingency and 15% for engineering, which gets us to the 921.6,
Mhm.
right? And then if I'm right, we have, roughly in the SIP for 27, I think it's in 27. We have how much for this?
So for this,
Well, she said 27, it's 26.
For 26?
yeah, for 26, what was allocated as part of the operating budget was for utility revenue for that.
Yeah.
And that when we're talking about it, the expenditure would be on that side and it'd be for $650,000 total between the collections and the water, I believe.
Okay, so there's a difference between the 650 and the 921. I wasn't sure where you got the 928.
I was estimating, I didn't look at.
Oh, okay, all right, that was what I was wondering about, okay. And now I'm looking at the map, so on the page before. And if I'm looking at the map and there's a legend in the lower right side of the map. And the legend is, so what does PR mean?
That would be for like the
proposed route, like proposed route.
Proposed, that's what I was wondering if it was proposed, thank you. Okay, we have a water main proposal and then we have a sanitary main proposal, okay. That's what I was wondering about, and then there's also a proposed for a sanitary FM project, okey doke. And the ones that are highlighted in pink, why are they highlighted in pink?
those would essentially be the proposed beneficiaries of the project or who would receive service in the future, like part of it, I believe. But maybe
Okay.
you can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
So it goes up Fieldcrest,
That's like a later phase, so this is the full map.
okay, that's
When we're
what's
looking
confusing,
at it,
okay,
it's essentially down to the proposed lift station is where we're talking about.
okay.
Why would only these couple properties be included? Wouldn't everybody along that run?
I mean, I'm assuming so. I think it's just for whatever the phase is for the other part of the extension. Or for where it is for the initial phase for going over to the side. I'm not 100% sure of why it's been allocated within that color, but that was just something that struck out to me and for future expansion. for
I
design.
kind of assumed that the different colors were potentially maybe commercial focused areas. But the colors I couldn't really get a exact definition of either just from looking at it. That was just my assumption. Because
Yeah.
all of the properties on the west side of the highway would benefit as well, so that would be serviceable properties, so.
Yeah,
Sort of along the same lines is like it says, Hadeen property proposed distribution.
that's
It's
Dovetail.
What's that?
It's Dovetail.
That's not a real thing.
So this was a map from 2018.
Oh,
So anything on there in terms of
That's before.
the site, it's there. This is the most recent version when they
that's already there.
Oh, yeah,
discussed the issue.
Okay.
yeah, that sort of threw me too. I'm like, oh my God, you're building a grocery store.
So nothing has been
Stuff.
updated within GIS.
Yeah, I got you.
Or, you know,
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
This is just really from my understanding. Do we need for properties to be serviced on both sides? I assume you only need a main water and sewer on one side of the highway. And then you would run your laterals underneath the highway, or would you put a water main and sewer on both sides of Highway 57?
Most places you would just do on one side and then lateral over to the specific property under the highway.
Because there's the most number of laterals on the trail side, that's why you have it on that side.
It makes the most sense, yep.
The other one I get, so right now, the main ends at Eagle Mechanical for everybody.
In just that section of the service area, that is a dead end that was extended, yep. So it ends at about the median line of, it ends right before the Eagle Mechanical driveway. Exactly, there's a fire hydrant there, that's the dead end.
And then I guess I'm just kind of curious, when the village has extended water and sewer in the past. I don't know if it was phased out or if certain neighborhoods are, I don't know how it was done in the past. Does the village typically pay for the main lines and then the property owners pay for the laterals?
You pay by linear foot.
so if we're talking.
Every property has in the past?
So if we're talking about the special assessment financing option, the way that it would go is that it would go through what the defined area would be for the project, and that the most typical payment method would be to take what is considered special assessment eligible. Sometimes it can be 100%, but sometimes it's a portion of it, but whatever that number is, and then apply it by what the frontage footage would be for the property. And then that would determine what the share would be for it. And then there's also there's no corner lots, I believe, on this one, but some, there's different nuances as part of it, but we're just talking about the frontage, that's what it would be.
Correct.
So, oh, sorry. So if you're running it all the way down to, the corner of the Pass Museum or wherever this is, and then bringing it up in front of, I don't know what this street is, but in front of the proposed wedding venue, it's, how it goes down and then goes back up.
Yes.
Wouldn't, are you just, how do you choose what the number is per linear footage? Do you estimate the cost of the entire project and then divide that by the total number of linear feet for the 3-year project? Or you just do it per section?
There are some things that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Megan, that the utilities, depending upon the lot, what you're running and where and what you need. Sometimes utilities pays something all themselves and is not included as kind of the final number that then is divided amongst parcels and by linear front footage. Correct, Megan?
That is the way that some things can happen. So if it's infrastructure that the utility needs to operate, like a pressure reducing station to keep the pressure in the water distribution system accurate in a certain area, then the utility usually fronts that cost. In the case of a lift station, it could be divided up between all of the properties that are gaining a benefit from it. So like with this lift station, technically some properties that are on Country Lane could maybe be serviced by this lift station in the future, or properties south of the lift station even. So those properties could also be affected by the assessment. It all depends on how you set up and agree to the special assessment terms. Basically, I've kind of learned it's really up to everybody deciding how to set up the special assessment agreement.
So, and sorry, just to finish the thought. So say, you're doing the entire project. You go all the way down the highway, you put the lift station in, and you go all the way up Fieldcrest. And including the lateral or the part of the main that would go across the highway to the Devilly development. Wouldn't it be beneficial to everyone to take the total cost of the project? And I'm just saying, if you're, I mean, so example for them, if they have to pay just for their $250,000 main extension, wouldn't it be beneficial to them to average that out amongst the full run in the end? Like, cause when we approved the budget, we put in that placeholder to run that water main over. And we were told the village is this is a placeholder, the village is fronting the money for this main line. And then the property owner in the end ends up paying for it, which I think is a ton of money for you guys to have to pay for a water main to go over. But wouldn't it benefit the entire group if? Am I making sense at all?
Well, I think it might boil down to like, what is the cost? Is the cost per linear foot the same for a main? As the cost per linear foot for a lateral?
No,
The main would be.
the lateral
So
you're
we're
responsible for your property.
But it sounds like the
building
main
cost itself, right?
So
It's less.
when we're talking
The
about
lateral.
mains as well, as there's a public main, excuse me, a public lateral, and then there's also your private lateral as
Mhm.
well. So ultimately, if there is, so as part of the project to be included as part of the public lateral, whether or not it's included as a special assessment or some other funding source, it's gonna be included as part of the village's responsibility to put in the public portion of the lateral, right? Is that, that's part of the project, how it's financed, is the details. Then there's also the private lateral that would be connected from the structure, to the public
Right.
lateral as well. That'd be something that each property owner and one, based on our current ordinance, if we do have a main going through, it would be a mandatory hookup to go
Right.
to it once the structure is built.
It is mandatory.
Yeah,
Within a period of time, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's within a period of time and also once you actually have something that would need to be serviced by it. So if you are currently on septic, there'd be a period of time where you would transition over to this service. But if you don't have anything there, it essentially kicks in, it's when it's being connected in. You'd have to connect into that, whereas you wouldn't be connecting, to a septic system. You'd have to hook up to the systems that are currently in place.
Whether
Andy,
you're
to
an
give you
existing
an idea.
property or if you build in that area. Okay.
Andy, I have an existing property I had to in another part of the state hook up sewer and water. The combination was about $12,000.
Right, but you didn't have to run the main, did you?
I had to pay for the main over 10 years.
That's like the special assessment, like over 10 years is the typical if they don't pay up front.
That's pretty much the way most municipalities in the state do. Now, Denise makes a great point, or Megan did, that they can take out items if they feel that they're a shared item. And I think Denise is also saying, and I didn't know you could do this, but we can also, if we have a policy, I think, that gives us a framework, decide how to divide up the cost among the homeowners that will be in the special assessment.
Nick, did you want to respond to,
I just wanted to shed a little light.
okay,
A lot of this, what you guys are talking about, has directly to do with my wife and I. I approached Megan early summer, late spring last year, asked her what it would take to be special assessed, run the laterals to her farm. And that's how this whole thing started. I'm fairly certain. So I knew it was budgeted in October based on the conversations that her and I had had on our property with Skylar with Allison, with Stantec, and with Gary Reinhardt Excavation. And at that time, we were debating whether or not to do it privately or to do it where it would help everyone, so to speak. The help everyone route is the special assessment. $250,000, not even close, probably more like, if you take into account our frontage is a quarter mile, because it's the entire 40 that they have to run it one way or the other. We have 4 properties that would need to be serviced, 2 B1s with nothing on it, the patio and restaurant and our farm. $750,000, most likely. And that at 10 years is $75,000 a year plus their taxes. So it's not doable for us. After all of this and hearing all of this, originally, we just wanted it to be brought across the street when we were looking at Eagle Mechanical do their stuff. If you remember back to 2018, I know it's a sore spot. Plan Commission, Finance, the village board did approve $235,000 to run that sewer lateral from the aquatic center, the land we own, to where the brewery was gonna be. Had we done that, we would have bankrupted our tap water company and been out of business, but we'd have a lateral. And this would all be done, paid for by the village. So I just want you all to know that this is possible. But privately doing it, now that I see how this has turned into all of these other things, it's almost more, it's gonna be more beneficial for my wife and I to bring that lateral through the woods, straight through our yard, and to hook up our farm that way. If this is the road that the village is gonna go with special assessment at 10 years. And I know Megan did her best. Originally, Skylar was in charge of it. Robert E. Lee took over. Robert E. Lee has done shoddy work for me multiple times. I don't trust them. I don't like their opinions. And they're actually the company that threatened us and had the whole first lateral dropped.
If I could, thank you, Nick. I think, the issue is we have a budgeted item that was recommended and approved by the board for $650,000. In my opinion, this project is too big and unknown with the cost for us to make a recommendation to go forward on this. I think we're gonna have to get the numbers right. We're gonna have to have a public hearing. We're gonna have to talk to those people that would be impacted, like the Devilees and others, about their special assessments. I think there needs to be a little more transparency here and a clearer understanding of what we're gonna do. I don't see supporting this.
Yeah, I mean,
I just want to say, just so you all understand, we have to make a decision for our own selves sooner than later because we're on septic on multiple properties. And nothing is not working currently, but if one of my septic systems, specifically the patio hotel, which I have a tenant in renting, if that were to fail, I'm done at that point. That puts me underwater. So coming up with a solution, we started almost a year ago to get to this point, and now I'm tied into all of these other tangibles that are out of my control. Ultimately, it makes the most sense to almost do it privately, which is unfortunate. So I had a feeling this is where this was gonna go today, and I wanted to make sure you all understood what my point of view is, that if I don't, and the patios for sale, that's the continuous question that is asked of us over and over again. How is the sewer and water lateral gonna be hooked up and at what time frame? And how much it's gonna cost, and all of that's out of my hands, and then I did get an estimate and I had a path forward, and now it sounds like it's a lot of variables again, and that just has us sitting on our hands. We took the patio off of market until we had these answers, but it sounds like we're a long way from understanding how that can actually happen. I'm just being selfish, looking at my own property and how to get the 4 properties hooked up and what that would take. And that is
Megan,
where this whole thing started.
Megan, did you want to chime in before? I saw your name flash up on the screen, like you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was just listening.
Okay.
yeah, I mean, into Mike's point, from a bigger picture standpoint with, we have phase A, phase B on the map we're seeing here, but what's not included on the map is an entire section of commercial that goes south of here. Right? Would that be, the last phase, and would that run down to the historical, society property? Because on the other side of the highway from there, that's all commercial. It's all within the TID too.
So as part of this, it could certainly be a conversation later on for future expansion by doing this project to essentially adding more service to the area that could be expanded later on. I know when speaking with Megan, essentially by expanding it, they can alleviate some of the other portions of the utility as well. Specifically some lift stations that are higher up within the system, that a new lift station could be built that would support that in the future. But I think this is the step one in that process is expanding utilities and having the main down that corridor. And then later on, if there is an increased interest in development down that corridor, that could also be, evaluated in the future. But, this one's going to be a heavy enough financial lift as well, no matter which way you put it. So I think it's just gonna be time will tell.
And I guess this question might be for Megan, but in one of the initial, maybe it was a conversation or one of the documents I saw back in October, the lift station was actually about, I think it fell almost halfway up the proposed route compared to where it is now, and not having that price listed on the proposal we got. Is that first lift station location on the map that we received accurate, or would that be actually farther up towards?
Where it is on the map would be the best suited spot for the lift station based off this extension. In the future, that lift station that the on the map, it's placed by the vet clinic there. So if we do put a lift station by the vet clinic in the future, an option would be to put a lift station down on the corner by the Historical Society and remove this lift station. It all depends on how far you're going down on your surface on the service area. Because once you get to the Historical Society, you get to the ultimate low part of the village. So this lift station would service everything up to that point. And then if you wanted to go anything further south down on the highway, you'd have to eventually get to that point of a lift station at the Historical Society to feed everything from Fieldcrest and from the highway.
Okay.
But this would be the best suited spot for the extension currently talked about right now.
And then Megan, just to clarify as well, in terms of the details for going to the Historical Society, I mean, both lift stations would be active, right? And based on our discussion, if this lift station was there, would it need to be completely replaced?
If this lift station was installed, and then in the future, if we did another extension down to the Historical Society, this lift station could technically be removed and the Historical Society could be, the lift station could take over that area. Yes, that's a potential.
I don't know if anyone here can answer this, but we did hear that the trail is likely delayed. We already did the engineering, so I guess we wouldn't want to move the trail to the other side of the road.
Yeah, the way that it's currently in place is it would not be recommended to move where the trail is. It's been,
I think we saw pretty big numbers for engineering we already spent, right?
Well, we got a grant for
And the grant.
location.
Oh, for the grants
yeah,
related to
so
the
it'd be tied
location.
to the
Okay.
location, and not only that, it also has specific DOT requirements that are associated with it. That based on the right of way of the other side of the road, if it, was theoretical, it probably would not be the best place.
Got it. Well, I would make a motion that we consider this as a capital project as we begin our financial review for 2027.
I think I want to have a little more discussion. Can you hold on to
Sure,
that motion
sure.
momentarily, Mike?
Sure, I can. Bridget.
I guess I wanna understand, the hesitancy. If we can save some money, and if we have 2/3 of the money budgeted already, why would we?
Maybe I'm misunderstanding. We have 650, and it looks like this project would be over 2 million.
Not including the lift station.
Maybe this is a question for Megan. Does this project work phase one without the lift station where it's supposed to be?
No,
Because my understanding did not pass, a certain point on the run.
Yeah, if we can get gravity up to the second property on the map that's currently unserviced. So the second property past Eagle Mechanic, the current property, Eagle Mechanical, the property south to it, we can get gravity to. But anything south of that needs the lift station. So you could get 400 feet south without the lift station, but that's not giving you much.
Right, so, you know. With that being the case, we would be putting in. Half the run that wouldn't be able to be used because you need a lift station to. To service it, right? So. I don't know if that makes sense to do that. You'd be paying for, you know, however many properties that you couldn't tie into. For it. Or with it, so.
Can I comment?
Yeah.
I won't vote on anything because I obviously own one of these properties, so I don't think that's fair. But I do think it's important to hear from someone who does own one of these properties. I think we don't have all of the numbers. I think we would need a much more accurate estimate on what the lift station costs and what the entire project costs as a whole. What does that cost to the village? And then what does that cost per landowner? Because at some point, if this project is so expensive that say you guys or him or us or any other property owner along that way makes it cost, and if you're required to hook up to it and you can't possibly afford to hook up to it, if it becomes so cost inhibitive, how much of that does the village take on versus do they put on the property owners? I just feel like there's so much information we don't have that even if I was going to vote, I wouldn't because I don't have enough information.
Yeah,
I
and
think it's a good idea in general, for sure, but boy, we don't have enough numbers.
yeah, and I also own property along the proposed route. And I sort of have the same feelings, and then, you know, if you look at. Phase B or, you know, the second phase of this.
Yeah.
I mean, that entire run based on the current. You know, property right now would be split up by. Two people in the county, maybe, because it runs around along the county. Shop there, and then it runs into. A large Anderson property and the Northern House. Property as well. So they would be, and it's almost, it looks like the same linear footage or similar linear footage. To what phase one is, so that would be split up between. Maybe two property owners, maybe three.
That would be for the like future utility extension, so you can almost think of it as, you know, phase A would be its own project, and that would have to be discussed about how it would be financed. If it is for special assessment, it would be specifically tied to what it is for utility extension for that project, and that if everything went on with what was previously planned, the B would be a separate project, separate assessment type, probably within a future year, more than likely. So the one that would be going down the 57 corridor would be what the discussion is for right now, and then it would be later on that it would be determined what is appropriate. The other alternative is that, you know, many other communities also do have a special assessment policy, not saying that it's needed, but if there is anything that would define what they should all be in the future, that's something that could be discussed. Otherwise, in terms of what is and is not equitable, if there is an opportunity to evaluate that as part of the 27 budget, because the trail project is pushed back, it could be more comprehensively evaluated and probably done the appropriate way of being included as part of the CIP as well, and outlining what the intended financing sources would be for the project.
So there's three reasons why, Denise, I think we should defer this, and I believe it probably is a good project long-term. One is that we don't have a methodology that we can describe right now, other than what we've done historically in terms of how we do special assessments. And we've heard from three citizens here that the special assessment model is not too good for them. Secondly, we don't know the cost that we're committing to here, but it's probably significantly over the 650. I think it's more than the 921, was it 921,000, because of the other infrastructure that we would be responsible for and the unknown cost that has been described. So I think that no special assessment process, the fact it's not in the budget and the fact that we don't know what we're exactly committing to if we approve this to the board, I think we have to have a robust process around this to get to the details before we make a recommendation to the board to approve this project.
So Megan, with what Mike just said, how could we achieve that and how quickly could we achieve that? Getting that information?
So I am working with the engineers right now on designing the lift station. And that is the final cost estimate that they will provide. And then I can start reaching out to Baird to try to see if we can start getting a special assessment agreement out there. But I mean, I really can't move to do that until I have the approval.
So as part of it, the special assessment process, I mean, we want to have the preliminary numbers about what it would be allocated for the special assessment, if it is the square footage model that would be utilized for it, and then if there would be any
Front footage?
front footage, if there would be that model or if there would be any combination of any other financing for it. But after that, there is a specific process by state statute that would need to be implemented for public, for the special assessment, including a public hearing process, and ultimately a resolution that would be adopted for it as well.
May I ask one more question?
Sure, Nick.
This is not how I understood this whole process, at least with my back and forth with Megan, so there, I must have not understood something. Am I understanding correctly that with the A part of the project, that the Dudley property would potentially be special assessed in the same numbers that the lift is involved with?
Well, your property is still on Gravity. Megan, can you answer that question?
Yep, Nick, your property is still on Gravity, so you would not benefit from that lift station. So I would assume that that special assessment would not be directed towards you.
Thank you.
But there would be a special assessment for any infrastructure that would go along the lot lines of his property, correct?
Yeah, the mains, the portion that he's benefiting from. So he would benefit from the Gravity mains, whereas the lots that are south of Eagle Mechanical on the highway would benefit from the mains and the lift station. So that would be double, or not double, but metaphorically, they would be paying towards the lift station if that's the way that the village decided to go forward, and they would also be paying for the main as well.
That's a huge.
Yeah, I mean, it just doesn't seem to be, you know, I mean, I would benefit from the Gravity. You know, from the Gravity right now, but like, if you're, you know, if an option is to, if we're considering having just the property owners who are benefiting from the lift station, right now, that's like 1, 2, 3 property owners.
Because you don't, right, Andy?
I do not.
So it starts.
No, it would, I mean, that's like, it's 3 property owners would be splitting the entire cost of the special assessment for a lift station that everyone else in the future will be benefiting from. And currently, it doesn't work, like the entire line doesn't even work without the lift station. And now, you know, I don't think that's the greatest idea from an assessment standpoint.
Can I ask one more question?
Yeah, but can I ask Megan, but wouldn't the property across the street also be assessed, just not on the left?
I believe any property that would benefit from the lift station being added would be assessed. So they would create an elevational profile, the engineers would, and then they would determine which properties could feed into that lift station based on the elevation profile. And then those properties would get the assessment placed on it. So it's not just necessarily where the pipes are running. It's whatever property could potentially funnel into that lift station. So even if there's not a main installed across that property currently, if in the future they could benefit from the lift station, that assessment would also be placed on their lot as well, is my understanding.
So I want to follow, I'm sorry.
I interrupted kind of Bridget.
No,
so I'll let
that's
her go.
okay. I mean, I'm not gonna fight for my personal property. I get it, that seems a little one-sided. I think it would be super helpful to know how much the lift station cost would be. And to make sure that it's not cost you 3 times the value of the property just to put in water and sewer because you're required to. But my question before was, is there a way, they've already been assessed, right? And we put that $250,000 in the budget to run that lateral already for their development. Maybe we put it in for 2026. The $250,000.
That's just a budgeting placeholder, so the assessment hasn't been signed or anything. That was just placeholding for the project this year.
I guess, sorry, I'm not phrasing it right.
But
Is there a way to say, hey, we need more numbers before we try to throw this in here under the 57 trail? In a perfect world, this would all work out great. We'd get the laterals in, or we get the mains in, we'd run the trail on top of it. It would be graded perfectly and it would be wonderful. I don't see that happening quite as quick as we want, but since we've already put in the placeholder for the budget and they're going to extend the main over to their property for their development anyways, is there a reason we're holding that section of it up?
See,
Like, can we vote on just theirs to pass that part?
I just wanna make sure she understands that. Yeah,
Development already has a main. This is for like our farm, restaurant and other commercial properties in the front.
so there's a sewer and water lateral, on the north side of the property, and then Jim and Carroll property we just purchased, there's 2 sewer and water laterals. Mains on the other side of our property in the woods, and both of those will service the development that we're approved for.
Okay.
But the farm, the patio, and the 2B1s. It probably makes the most sense for me to do it privately and bring it through my yard. I approached Megan to see if I could bring it across the highway. So we're trying to feed the rest of our property with a lateral to benefit the village. Instead of doing it privately where it dead ends on our property, but the development and our farm where it would be fed as of this conversation are 2 different water mains essentially.
Okay, so if we don't approve section A right now, it doesn't hold you guys up.
No,
Okay, I just want to make sure we're not living
Yeah, I
by
think,
something that was already approved in the past. I thought that would be silly.
Denise, going back to your question, so if we look at the Hadeen property there, I think that's the Dovetail property. Will they benefit from the sewer line? I mean, is it gonna serve Dovetail also? If it is, wouldn't they be in the
Dovetail is
assessment?
in Liberty Grove.
Oh, that side of the road is Liberty Grove.
No, Luis, mentioned it or called it the Dovetail property. On the map, it's labeled Hadeen property, proposed distribution facility. That's what she was referring to.
That,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
That did goof me up. So that this is Paula Hadeen's property. Wouldn't that property benefit from the sewer main? And wouldn't they'd have an assessment, wouldn't they?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay,
They would be potentially benefiting from the project, even if they don't have anything right now that would potentially.
but that would be a big number. That's a long way.
Yeah, yes, and you know, I think one thing that we haven't really talked about, which I think has to be included in the conversation, is all these properties that we're talking about are in the TIF or TID. Right, the majority are in TID 2. The first initial run are in TID 1. And you know, it's interesting that there are like proposed distribution facility, you know, labeled on the map, like that's what projects like this are supposed to drive through the TID, right? That's what the TID is supposed to drive, projects that are listed, just like the ones that are listed here, right? So, you know, if you factor in the tax rate within the TID and potential property value with running, you know, the proposed sewer and water mains, I mean, the payback through the TID could be a lot shorter than expected, and it would also potentially expand through the rest of the TID, you know, up to their project and whoever else, right? So I think we'd have to look at leveraging TID funds in a TIF district that's mainly commercial.
I partially agree with you in that. I think we have another action out for the staff, right? To develop a policy to give consideration to requests for, basically support for kid-related investments. And that could take a lot of different shapes and forms. That could come into place here. But that's math we can do that I would like to see.
I think we're touching on a very gray area when, because you own property there and you're talking about TID money and a conflict of interest rather, I'm just,
Yeah.
No, I totally agree.
if we're just talking in general about the expansion of it, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Yeah.
And
No, I totally agree. And I actually, there are two TID districts there, right? That would be benefiting from this, so I understand.
Okay,
So I mean,
Quick question, Denise, I wonder why, or maybe this question is for Megan. The expansion doesn't go all the way to Liberty Grove, why it doesn't go further down 57 unless it just, it's.
at
the
one
math is
time,
not-
at one
doesn't-
time, and, somebody said that this, Ben, I think said this is a 2018 map.
Yeah,
It was, and I remember it, but I don't know that I remember all the details of it. There was a reason why it cut behind the county shop
yep,
and whatever, and maybe it was because of the wedding barn at that time and looking at that time.
I think you might be right when talking about it. Megan, did you have some background on phase B of the
Because
project?
Megan wasn't here when that was going on and it didn't necessarily make 100% sense to bring it to the corner when the Historical Society owns so much of that property.
yep,
I think it was a better run.
okay.
And not saying that we still can't do that and bring it to the corner of the highway and Fieldcrest. And so this doesn't even mean that this is what we actually want to do in the future. We
Mhm.
still could bring it to the corner and go down Fieldcrest and not cut on property lines.
I just didn't know if, not that I don't wanna spend any more money, and if it was more efficient to do it all.
At the time, it was, for what we were talking about, it was more efficient
Uh-huh.
and that it was laid out this way.
Mhm,
Whether or not that still holds true, I cannot say.
mhm.
Because I think the wedding barn put in their own very, very expensive system.
Yeah. So do we have in the code or in our policies and procedures or for the process and for something like this where in terms of letting people who are, would be part of this project, what they would have to pay right now, because in 1987, it's a long time ago, almost 40 years ago, they brought sewer and water down our road. And I remember the blasting. And so we did not pay for what came down the road, but we paid for what came to the house. And it was based on frontage, and so you didn't have to sign up for it
Yeah,
back
Our
then.
policy now is.
I know,
goes
of
past
course it is, yeah, but back then, so we have a lift station in our backyard.
so to
For that
answer
reason.
the question is that as part of our financial policies, we do not have a specific special assessment policy, but without a special assessment policy, we would defer to what is allowable or mandatory by state law. And as part of that process, it would be contacting the property owner,
Yeah.
letting them know the proposed value and the calculations of what it would be for the entire project.
Uh-huh,
And then it would be holding the public hearing. And
okay,
then the finance committee would either have a recommendation for approval or rejection to the village board and ultimately be potentially approved by resolution. That would be the process in a nutshell of what is mandated, but with that being said, is that there could be more communication is part of it, of reaching out initially or getting any feedback. That's just what is mandated as part of it.
And isn't there an option for us to investigate the potential, since this is all in TID, to look at if there is some portion of this that should be a village investment in the TID?
Yeah, I
I mean,
mean,
that's what I thought I read as one of the funding options that was on the table.
yep, I mean, it can be a combination of basically any of the financing options that were listed. If it wasn't just special assessment, or it could just be TID, it just depends on what is deemed appropriate. But yes, it could be covered as an expense for it, with the anticipation that it would increase the capacity for businesses in the area to develop and have a greater assessed value, which would increase the property taxes for the village. With that being said, it would probably be most appropriate to have financing that would be against the TID for the project, and use the TID to pay off the financing over the appropriate period.
So Denise, I guess my thinking is still that there are a lot of unknowns here. And that while I think this infrastructure investment is a necessity over some period of time in the village, I think we need more information before we can make a decision. And I would suggest, maybe based on the coaching you gave me in the last meeting, we direct staff to provide us more detail, including what the TID options might be and what the special assessment calculations might look like, would be a suggestion.
So just in terms of the special assessment and then a combination with the TID, basically two alternatives, or should there be maybe one alternative that's higher or lower?
I don't know.
Okay.
I defer to Denise or our financial advisors to guide us on.
Well, and that's why I asked Megan that question earlier. So she needs to continue working with the engineers, fine tuning it, getting those final numbers. I think Megan's work comes first. She filters that through Ben, and the two of them then work together moving forward on answering the questions that are being discussed here.
I'm good with that.
I'm good with that.
So the only, if Andy and Bridget can't vote, if it comes to Louise.
I mean, it's also, there's a consensus in its staff direction as well. Doesn't necessarily need a motion, but it could be useful if you want to have it.
Learned that lesson
decided.
twice in 2 meetings in a row.
But ultimately, if there is just the direction moving forward, just to work with the consultants, finalize engineering, and to develop some alternatives based on the financials, what needs to be brought back.
As long as that's aligned with what Denise just proposed, I support it.
I think if there's consensus.
Yeah, it's just directing Megan and then Ben to move forward and hammer it out.
Louise,
Yeah, I'm fine with that, but do we need a motion, or is that,
No.
or is that the motion?
No.
Okay,
direct
By
that.
consensus.
okay.
Bless you.
That was-
We weren't sure what that
I was either.
was. The gas, but what?
All right,
Very petite time, bless you. Denise.
all right.
Okay, then that,
Can I ask a question we maybe asked while I was in the restroom? Because it's a commercial corridor now, I assume that so if someone built a business down the line right now, would they be required to pull sewer and water mains all the way to their property, or could they do a well and a mound system now? If it's not if it's not close enough and not available, could you still set up a business without and just dig a well?
So with the I'd have to look up the mandatory hookup ordinance, but generally if you have something there existing or if it's being built, it's my understanding that with the mandatory hookup, that if you put something in, you'd have to connect, but I don't know if you have it in front of you, Megan, or if you know offhand if there's any deviation.
I know the answer.
What is it, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, that's what Robert Ely told me, was that if I put in the sewer and water, that they would make sure that the village did special assess us, and that we would pay in the future within 5 years to hook up. So you definitely have to hook up, no matter when you put in the sewer, or the septic, but you can put in a septic as long as the DNR approves it, and then.
Right, and if the village
once it
comes by,
crosses the base of-
Then you gotta
pay for it again.
Yeah,
And I-
there has to be a distance limitation, I would imagine, based on how far away you are from the hookup.
I was
right?
saying, yeah, what if the main wasn't there?
It's when it crosses the base of your driveway, when they bring it across.
Oh, sure, then
So
you're.
if it-
Right, yeah.
If it
That I
was,
Yeah.
if the main was there and you don't have the business there, it'd be my understanding that you would have to hook up as long as
Whenever
it,
you build,
whenever you build.
For sure.
That's what it-
But I mean, like the houses and stuff that are just off of that, I assume they each have a well.
So if they're on a well, then they would be, if it goes across the property, then they would be mandated to hook up as part of the ordinance. It'd be a mandatory hookup policy or ordinance, excuse me.
All these rules I did not know. But in general, at some point, we anticipate that we're going to.
It's
pull
coming
water
down
and
that
sewer.
road.
Right, at some point it's going to happen.
Yep.
It will likely never be less expensive than it is in the current year
Correct.
for the next year. So I get that part.
Yeah, I think the main thing of this one in terms of framing is that the trail project is coming down the pipeline and that if it's either done now or it's going to be damaging the trail, but in order for future development to occur, you're gonna have to have water and sewer down that corridor
Mhm.
for any of the properties that be going in.
Right.
Especially the high commercial use properties that it wouldn't necessarily be feasible for them to have the well and septic on their site.
Yeah, I mean, if it were residential, I would maybe sing a different tune, but it's all commercial properties now. Okay,
Okay, if there's nothing else, is there, next meeting, Monday, March 9th, and that's to go over the TIF policy, correct?
Yep, this is over the TIF policy.
And everybody can make that meeting?
Denise, I'll have to make it remotely.
Okay, that's fine.
I'll be remote. Actually, I don't at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. If we're traveling that day, so I don't. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Iffy, I don't know.
And then the only other things that were brought up as part of the board meeting was the fiber optic bond discussion, as well. And then, I was in discussion with Barrett as well. They might not be able to make the March meeting, but they can make an April meeting to have a TID 101 and a TID, services overview of what they proposed as well. That they could, provide additional information about TID. And they also proposed on some different services that might be of interest to the village as well.
My apologies, I can make the night.
You can.
I can, yes, in person.
This would be my suggestion if Baird can't make it till an April meeting. That, they come when, after April 20th. After April 20th. Because you will have a new board seated, you are going to have a new finance committee. And so if they're doing a 101, there may be another new member on here that also needs to hear that. That's up to you, but that's my
Yeah,
suggestion.
it's a good suggestion.
I can certainly take that feedback and see, when they would have availability post that date as well. That was just something that, when discussing with them, following up from some of the other inquiries for education, that they said that they could provide that done. But probably a future date would probably work as well.
So no meeting on the 9th, you moving that to April, or are we still gonna have
That's
this
still meeting on the 9th.
on the tip? Okay,
Yep.
yep, I'll be there.
Would you like Paul here for that?
Yes, please. Thank you. Okay. There's nothing else. I'll make a motion to adjourn at 3:19.
So move.
Motion by Laskowitz. Is there a second? Second by White, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Bridget and Andy, did you receive the letter from the village attorney?
Was it recent?
So there was a, so we can talk offline.
I can